somebody coming in. Let me know when you're ready, Brian. Hello, Ray.
Good evening, good evening.
We are live. We are live according to this.
Couple minutes, it's all right.
Good evening, Ray.
Good evening.
That's great, so. Hello, hello, contact.
Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3.
Is this on? Yep.
Yeah, check.
I'll stand. I've been sitting all day and need to stand up for a while.
Just kind of go through.
Testing, 1, 2,
We'll have
3,
just so
4,
we have a little bit of a
5,
record.
6,
I see
7.
nobody, doesn't look like
8.
anyone else is gonna show up.
Hi, Mary.
Don was here and he had to leave for a minute. He'll be back later. Hi, Mary. You made it plenty of time.
I don't know where his speakers are. I'm gonna check it on my phone.
Yeah, I'll log on.
You know
See.
what, I saw this minutes, my bag is at home because my husband cleaned the inside of my car.
Hello. Hello. Yeah, we're getting,
I'll just approve it. You don't want that one.
hello, we're on. I just want to confirm that we're streaming, we're live streaming. I just want to confirm that we have audio. We should.
Some of these guys like $30 an hour. Although I don't understand it.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna switch this around if it's all right with everybody. I'm gonna let Tom speak first and then we'll approve the minutes after.
Sounds good.
Are you okay? I mean,
Oh, Mary's here. You go ahead.
I got it, yeah.
we're good?
Yeah. we're
Okay, all right, let's get it going here. Welcome, everybody, to Economic Development Committee meeting Tuesday, December 6th, 2022 at 5:32. And we are being live streamed. First order of business will be roll call. We have Mary Brenner Miller,
Here,
Raymond Whedon,
Here,
and Fred Nielsen here. We're going to have to approve our minutes from April 5th, 2022. Have you had a chance to look those over and everything?
yes, and I'd like to ask for approval of the minutes of April 5th, 2022.
second.
Okay, minutes approved. And our next order of business is our economic development update with Tom Jordan. Tom, if you just want to go ahead and take it over, just to let anybody watching know these, I don't know if you can see the renderings, but we do have the renderings of Smith and Obie and the ward development at the corner of Northfield and Alexander.
Okay. Good evening, council and members that are live, or residents that are live streaming. I'll just do a brief update. Many of you attend meetings with the mayor, and also I regularly meet with council, obviously, especially recently, and have attended some of the planning commission meetings. So I'm going to do a brief update and then talk a little bit about strategy, and then see if anyone has some questions. On the two projects that are before you this evening and these renderings, the Ford plant, they went through, and a lot of these applications before the planning commission have, in the history of Walton Hills, are infrequent. So when they do appear, you're like, oh, what do we do now? So if the update at least tells you where they're at in the process, they generally start with a conceptual plan, and usually with a client. This building is a spec building, and they lay it out on the site, and they interact with the village staff and we give them feedback on that conceptual plan. They then, if they arrange financing and want to proceed, they then make an application to the planning commission. If they want incentives, they make an application to council. In this case, they are not asking for any incentives at this time. They then proceeded to the planning commission. They had 2 meetings. They were for site plan approval, and also they were splitting off a portion of the property. The splitting off a portion of the property means that this is a very expensive building. So they have to lend against a specific parcel number for the banking purposes. So a portion of the 100-acre site will be divided off. That portion, they'll lend against it. They'll use those funds to build the building. They did receive the lot split. They did receive final site plan approval. They then move further into drawings, and they submit it to the building department, and they get a building permit to actually construct the building. So that's what they're doing now, is moving their plans along, and then they'll submit it to the building department, and a plan will be issued. This thing is going very quickly. There is a little abnormal, is that you don't normally have the footers in. They don't have 2 million square feet of space to it. This time last year, they just closed on the building. They had applied for state funding within about 30 to 60 days of them closing, which they were very successful in it. It's a very unusual year. They got $10 million to do that. They then took down 2 million square foot. They're now putting up basically 250,000 square foot of industrial space on a speculative basis. All of that, there's a lot of unusualness in that. But it's all in the village's favor from my perspective. The village has not contributed towards the demolition. We have not contributed towards the new building. When the individual tenants come, it's possible that they may ask as individual businesses for it. That's a possibility. But what the village is doing is doing TIFs, non-school TIFs, it's called, and where we segregate a portion of the funds from the real estate taxes into a separate fund for the village to use for infrastructure that's surrounded. I have explained this, and I believe you also had the city's financial advisor explain what that means to the village financially. But the significance to this committee is that you are not giving it to the developer. You're actually taking the money back for the village's purposes. Normally, I'd come before this committee and say that the developer is asking for an incentive and get your feedback on that. So really, they're moving forward with the normal city process to construct this very large building. They're completing demolition at the site, and we await to see what their first tenants will be. We've had some general interest in some of the units. I know that they've been provided as like all prospective tenants. Hey, what would this space look like if I leased it, and how much square foot? That is going on very actively. So we hope to have some of the first tenants in there. The Smith Obie project is an existing long-time Walton Hills business that is expanding. If you've ever been in the building, it's actually very crowded, and they needed the extra space, period. I believe will enhance that corner, which is a very strategic corner at Northfield and Alexander. It will come a long way from the dilapidated gas station it once was. And it is a very small parcel. It belongs with a larger parcel, and luckily we have a business there that needs the land for expansion. They also got their planning. They seem to be willing to move. There was a long delay in the construction of this addition, is because that the ownership, there was a sale and there's a change in ownership. The good news is that the new ownership wants to still continue to invest in the site. Moving forward, about strategy and then questions was that The TIF, I'm glad that the village has now, I hope, an understanding of how there's this non-school TIF. In the future, there might be regular TIFs, just a TIF. And a lot of those, the money would flow directly to the project or the developer. Let's say, for example, that they did not get their $10 million from the state of Ohio to help with all the remediation and demolition of that structure. That new building that was throwing off that cash that flowed back to the village could have been, they could have asked, and we had preliminary discussions for them to use that funds to help with the demolition, help with the infrastructure, and help with some of the extra work that needed to go in to make that site developable, like the grading. So that is a likely scenario in the future, that someone's going to ask for a portion of the increased property taxes. The overall strategy for the village is always about payroll taxes. So right now, you're going to pocket tens of thousands of dollars, ideally, quite possibly in hundreds of thousands of dollars, certainly over a period of time, from that new first building. And you'll be able to use it for infrastructure related to the project in some way. But if they have tenants in there, the village would also receive payroll taxes, almost immediately if the tenants are in there. And you get to keep that, ideally, 100% of that. And that's where the village's real big return is. So you have in the near future, some funds coming your way from this project. But when you hear about tenants, that's when the villages really should get excited about that. The build out, the building's estimated to be $16 million. And I believe Matt Szynski has given some estimates of what $16 million of added value at the site will throw off relative to the non-school TIF. But if that thing was housing all the tenants too, it would certainly double, if not triple, that kind of revenue for the village. So we're hoping that that kind of revenue does occur. You guys have an obligation to administer this city with the funds that you're provided in this particular coming fiscal year. There's not a big bump coming in 2023. So we got to make the village work with the funds that you have and plant the seeds for the future to make it, help it grow. And that's really what that is. Smith Obie is a good company. They're in a business that HVAC, that when you relate that back to the pandemic, there's a growing need for a lot of their services. A lot of your other businesses that are in the Crick Road and the industrial park off Northfield, though, are some legacy businesses, and the buildings are quite old. I've mentioned it before, but the strategy there, I have been dealing with your city-owned property that we got back to a tax foreclosure, which I'll talk about in a minute. But we need to redevelop that industrial park. All of those businesses originally went there because Ford was there. They were all suppliers, they were all related to them, that's why they were there. And to some extent, the new Ford redevelopment will attract others. But you can see why, if I'm a 50,000 square foot user even, I'd really rather do my investment at the Ford Innovation Center, because everything around me is going to be brand spanking new, all new infrastructure and attractive setting. But would I want to invest $5 million in a new building in the industrial park with the surrounding businesses that are there and the infrastructure that is there? One of the first infrastructure projects, we need to think about is redoing those industrial park, a lot of that work back there. I know your residents are clamoring for their subdivision streets too to get redone, but that's something to think about in the future. And as you know, the village doesn't have an extensive staff. Rob has several hats that he wears, and one of them is doing code enforcement. But in the future, that's sort of what we got to do. We did hear this week that one of the larger buildings in the industrial park is going up for sale. And also this week, it's been ongoing, you've heard me talk about the 7010 Crick Road, the city-owned property. The ongoing environmental work. We heard from the local EPA that one part of the, I could read you the email, it gets pretty detailed, has been completed. The other side of the EPA wants further assessments done. Basically, they're a little concerned. They want to make sure that none of the contaminants have migrated since over the period of time that it's taken to get cleaned up. So a cleanup has occurred at the site that we got a grant for, and the EPA oversaw it, and they came back at the end of the project and said, you know what, I think that was great that you did that, but I just want to be sure, and they want more testing. So we're going to perform that testing and hopefully receive a grant for it. I did relay to them that something did happen, was that a portion of the roof collapsed on the building. And I said, we may not be able to keep this building up while, it's taken us so long, while the last parts of the remediation. So they warned us, I warned them, and the contaminants they're concerned about are underground. Normally, when we issue a demolition permit for a building, they're required to take out the foundations and the slab. And this demolition, we probably will only take down the walls and maybe try to use village staff to do so. So it's sort of at a weird juncture on 7010 Crick Road. Meanwhile, I actually had expressions of interest from other parties to buy it. So we will see. Yes.
Tom, if you, Mr. Chair, I have a couple of questions. Tom, if you don't mind, the 7010 Crick Road, couple of questions.
I'm going to grab my,
Yeah. Okay.
because it might have an answer in it.
Well, you mentioned about the, I think you said the local EPA, so is that the Northeast office? And
Yeah.
then who's saying, is it the state or the federal EPA that is encouraging further assessment?
I'm going to get to read you, hopefully, this email that spells that out, because it is confusing, and I have a hard time keeping it. I roughly know what I'm doing. Okay. I'm going to paraphrase here a little bit, because you don't know what all of these people are. This is our consultant, is Manigan Smith, and they manage the remediation efforts on the village's behalf through a grant. They're funded through a grant. And they said, I checked with essentially the Ohio EPA, and in turn, they checked with the US EPA, and it appears that the US EPA has finally closed out their part of the project. With that being the case, Dan is going to check the update and eligibility for the site for the US EPA counterpart, so that the Ohio EPA can proceed with using targeted brownfield assessment money to complete that additional assessment. Okay, so does that make it any clearer?
Yeah, it does make it, it makes it much clearer, and it kind of answers what my follow-up question was going to be, which was going to be about additional funding, for continued work on that site.
It looks like there are some federal, and there's a lot of money under the recent federal funds that have been made available. They realize that Ohio has a lot of brownfields, so they left a lot of money there. It just takes so long.
Right. I have another question, and this, if you don't have it today,
Okay.
on your phone, that's
Okay.
in the approximate size of that parcel, not just the building itself, but the actual parcel. If you can email it
I
later.
think I'm afraid to
That's fine.
misquote. I know it's less than 5 acres. It might be as small as 2. It's not a big acreage.
And then my final question would be,
You could develop it by itself, though, unlike this, that we recently did.
if indeed the roof is in disrepair and the walls may need to come down, what would be the viability of the entire building coming down and just
The
dealing?
building has to come down, I will tell you regardless. No one can use that building. One of the walls is really, there's a gaping hole in it already, let alone the roof. And to say the roof is in disrepair is like, it's an understatement of the condition of that roof. There's a slight overhang. And what happened was that the overhang that wasn't so supported got so saturated. You know, the old roofs, blanking on the exact type of roof, got so saturated, that part that was unsupported, the overhang fell. The main roof that is spread between the walls, because it has more support, it's still up there. The walls are missing some. The only reason I'm reluctant to have city crews only on an emergency basis take down that is that we probably should have, yes, an environmental assessment done before the remaining walls and roof are taken down. But they will allow you to demo it if it's an emergency. If it's a health and safety issue, they'll allow you to do it.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I just want to make a quick statement.
Yeah.
That's hearing from Mr. Jordan about, and we're not administration for it.
Right.
Yeah.
But just to give my 2 cents, if we have an option other than village employees doing demolition work, you know, our guys, they're experts in a lot of things.
Yeah,
And, you know, sometimes it's best to just let others do.
I agree.
I just want to,
Yeah,
I just want to put that on the record that, you know,
I agree with you there. I've taken down buildings and not personally, I've had, you know, people do it for me and
Yeah.
to watch and what has to be done is, you know, it can be tricky.
Yeah. The city employees at a minimum probably going to remove that section that fell,
Right.
just so it doesn't look so bad. And then the mayor and I are going to have to make an assessment of whether or not we want to wait to get paid for it.
Tom, do you know how long that building's been vacant?
Well, actually, it's not as long. It's, ironically, the city took it over prior to Angela working for the city. That's 2 or 3 years, right?
Right.
17.
Yeah.
17 started.
Well, we, when I had a chance with the mayor, when I was on previous council, to go up and look at it. And being that it wasn't being used, I could see where things being in, you know, disrepair would cause water to back up and, you know, just from not being used. I mean, it's, it doesn't take long, but I was just wondering how long it was, the building itself was empty.
This, the village is going to have to take steps to make sure they can put up caution tape, remove what has fallen, and make plans for its ultimate demolition. I think that's the next step.
Next step. Anybody else? Jennifer Allen? We have Jennifer Allen here with us, and we also have Brian Spitznagel sitting in the back. He's our audience this evening, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tom, how soon should that building be coming down?
The only hesitancy is about all these EPA issues. Is the perfect world is that these guys finish all their work first, and then you do the demo. And the demo, as I stated before, would be to take down the walls and the roof. But even if I hired a demo company, I would not let them do the slab or the foundations because of the ongoing EPA work. And EPA, I did specifically ask them last day, and they responded with, if you have to, do it, but otherwise, if you don't have to, leave it up for a while longer.
Well, I was just thinking, and I think we talked about this before, but we weren't at the point of demolition with the building yet. And I think it might be a good idea just to get an estimate from the excellent demolition crew that is currently in the village working.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think that would hurt. They have all the equipment here right now. You know, it would stand to reason that they would have the capability to do that. although I don't know if that's something that would have to go out for bids too.
Yeah.
But even so, we may still get a better price with them.
I'll relay that to Rob and
I can certainly ask Matt when I'll talk to Matt.
Okay, my thought is just,
No,
their
I-
equipment's all right there.
No, no.
You know, they're moving it a mile down the road, so.
They certainly took down,
yeah, it's a small job by
yeah,
comparison.
a good comparison.
Some people don't like to get involved in small jobs, but
Right.
anyways.
Well, they may send one guy over, but it'll be down.
Dump truck and a sledgehammer.
Is that everybody good?
No, I had some other questions, but not related to that.
Sure.
I'm good with that piece, but,
Okay.
Tom, if you could just clarify, with the first spec building, I think you said there's $60 million.
$16 million
16,
cost of construction, yes, for the shell.
okay.
So what's being constructed is a shell with an undemised space in the interior. But they could easily double that value if you put bathrooms, office spaces, divided out, extensive racking systems. The build-out could be just as expensive as the shell was.
So as it relates to the TIF, so the village would be locked into the initial 16.
No.
I mean, at a minimum.
At a minimum.
At a minimum. And then however, should tenants or
Increase the value. of the
increase the value of what they ask for, it would not be based on the 16, it would be on the addition from once the building is completed to the time that it's outfitted for the tenant, is that?
Well, what you're doing through that council action is a permanent thing. It can be amended at a later point. But you're basically capturing all of the increased value associated with the county and city portion of the increased value of the property taxes permanently, no bars. So if the tenant moves in and it goes up to $20 million value, you add it to that stream. If it goes into 22 and 24 and 26, which frankly I anticipate that it will with tenants, you're permanently in a stream. However, future councils could amend it and say that the values from this date forward are to be used for a different purpose other than the general obligations that are outlined. If some need came up, if they said, hey, a new road needs to be put in, or something else like that, that you could amend the TIF. You could also, some people, we're getting into a lot of theories, but you could also still do abatement feature. Basically say for the increased value over the 16 million to 20, half of that we're just not going to charge you. That's essentially what abatement is. All in an effort to attract tenants, where the real return is on the payroll side. So we'll see. We'll see.
Tom, with the 5 buildings, okay, and they complete the first building, and we would start collecting the TIF, and that building is complete?
No, actually, even during, what's going to happen is that, and why you're doing it now, is that my guess is that the county is going to say for the second half of 2022, this year, that I would say there's about $5 million worth of increased value.
Improvements already.
Already. And they're going to give them a bill for it, and they're going to pay it, and you will get a portion of those funds. When it's completed at 16 million, of course, then you get more revenue.
Well, the other question I had was, now, the 30 years, let's say it starts, it would start when the county first assesses the building.
Yeah.
So that 30 years, now, does that 30 years start on the next building at the same time because it's all one property? Or does it go individually?
We did use, we can only use the information we have. We have one parcel number concerning it. I looked into this, no, I think The amendments to the TIF are possible that you could restart the 30 years for later projects, is what the answer to that question is.
Okay, that's what I was,
I believe it to be, you should be able to amend it. Whether you do or not, will make it, the decision council will make in the future.
well, that's kind of what I'm looking for, stability down the road for, I don't know if I'll still be on council here in 30 years.
No, but you will be facing decisions in the next 5 years, whether you will pass additional TIF legislation associated with other, or amending the current one. One scenario is that they assign a new parcel number and the split happens, that you go back even as early as next year and say the TIF only applies to this parcel. But we're not at that scenario. The new parcel isn't there. You could still leave the TIF on the balance of the parcel, which is still probably that old number. And it has been improved in value by demoing.
Yeah, just by taking the,
Yeah. So you could be still capturing that money. The financial advisor, and I'd have to get together and try to strategize on whether or not to amend it down to that new parcel number next year.
well, thank you. Anybody else? Any questions? Brian, anything? Jennifer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tom, could you just go over that part again? Because I only caught part of it about a mortgage potential.
Oh, well, the reason why they do the lot splits is that I am speculating on this, but I'm 99% sure this is the case, was that they form limited DROP is a limited liability corporation associated with that particular project. But even the three, they will form different LLCs, will own different buildings. And they'll go to the banks each time, there'll be individual mortgage. I may own 4 houses, but I have 4 different banks and 4 different loans. So that's why they split out the parcels. It's usually because that there's separate entities that own each one, and they each have their own mortgages. Sometimes there's layers of them, like 2 or 3 mortgages. There certainly probably was a construction loan. It could be with Bank of America. The permanent financing might be with Chase. So that's why they split them out.
And I'm sure not one bank wants to take a huge liability.
Right, you would think that most banks would say, okay, the next building is someone else's, so the whole thing goes then.
Okay, thank you.
We good?
Nothing online.
Mr. Chair, Tom, any estimate on the remaining demo at that site? Time, any estimate?
As far as I'm concerned, they're ahead of schedule, so I haven't asked that question to them. The only thing that I'm concerned that we should have is, they joke about when I'd like to see that fence gone. If you see that fence gone, that means all the materials are gone. So they may get that, all the buildings are down, materials are on site and sorted, but they have to get them out of there. And if they don't have that fence, people are going to steal. So if you see the fence gone, that means they've removed all the materials. So what we talked about is I said, for that new building, it's very likely that they may even fence in or rearrange the fence where it's only in the rear. Because who wants to look at this $60 million building through that awful fence and do that landscaping that's part of it? So the materials are going to take longer. They use quite extensively the other thing is that hauling. They try to minimize their hauling, and I don't blame them. All that concrete is broken up on site and crushed, and then hauled ideally directly to a new construction site or used on site. They don't want to take it to a temporary storage place and then haul it a second time. It's very expensive. So when they figure out how much is left, they'll probably store some on site and use it at different projects. the city has some authority to try to say enough, and we gotta get rid of the rest. But I'm not so worried about this in the next year.
Yeah. Well, it's good to hear that they're ahead of schedule, you know, on that demo.
Yeah.
Has there been any unforeseen site conditions or circumstances that they run
That is
into?
the miracle of it. To my knowledge, I asked the staff, we don't get any complaints from neighbors, which is usually the number one issue. Number two issue is environmentals. I had some independent environmental work done to begin with. We might spend a little money and follow up on it, but I'm not aware of any. They haven't notified the city of any violations of any of the.
No surprises.
No.
Tom, I had a chance to talk to Matt, he's the engineer running the project. And he did tell me after the planning commission meeting, that as the walls go up and as this building goes up, probably in the spring of this coming year, they are going to start with the, everything on the outside, all the plants, and so I would have to think that fence would have to go. He said that as the building goes up, they'll be putting in trees and plants and.
Right, but part of the fence will still remain there.
Yeah, maybe but
Yeah.
by this, I asked him about this end where this building is going up in particular. And so I would assume that fencing would be gone. And the old electrical plant, he said that they still draw their power through there.
Well,
So, I mean, the power plant itself is not in operation, but the lines going in there for the electric, that's what they're using for the power on the site. So that's why that hasn't come down. That'll probably be one of the last things.
Normally, there would be a temporary service pole in there, but.
They have a
They
pretty
have
nice
them.
one.
Right, they don't need one.
Don't close the book yet.
Oh, okay, okay.
All right, so my next question, this is a theoretical, hypothetical, I'm not quite sure how to put it. But you mentioned something about, and I agree with you, the need to redevelop the existing industrial parks. In other communities, or can you share any other examples or best practices on how others have merged the new up and coming piece, and then taking care of the existing to,
Right. Actually, I have had some experience in two different examples. I used to manage for the city of Cleveland the Chagrin Highlands project. That was a redevelopment of, they're all different kinds of uses. The most notable was the old hospital that came down, and they redeveloped it into that. But that particular one didn't have the extent of issues that your industrial park is. I would say the most closely related thing is like redeveloping an industrial park in some of the older sections of Cleveland, where you're trying to convince companies to go there. And what we did in those instances is try to make the infrastructure seem new. Because you go to Glen Willow, there's a new road, all new utilities, and they have a clean slate, and you get a picture of your new building there. So it would be about trying to help with the infrastructure. The other thing that is enforcing, and it's like everything else, a stick and would be building enforcement, and the incentive would be giving them money to help with improvements on certainly the exterior of the building. So if you came up with a program saying, you spend X amount of dollars, I'll match it to improve the facade. A lot of times it comes down to those signs, landscaping, exterior improvements, to make the existing buildings, more habitable. The other one, more complicated, that big building that went up for sale this week, is a giant of a building and they might have to look into some state funding, because there'll be a significant amount of improvements that we have to do.
Which building would that?
My apologies, it's another Crick Road address, I have it on the phone, and it has over 200,000 square foot in it. And it was used, I think, most recently for large storage, and it was owned by, I know the guy, he's a large, he specializes in industrial redevelopment. '71 60 Crick Road. Listed by KW Commercial. So that one is going to need we need some extra help. It has apparently several parts. There's more than one building on the site.
On that site?
Yeah, that's it.
Are they all,
One is 50,000 square feet.
are they all up for sale or just the one?
I looked at this. This particular advertisement only has to do with 50,000 square feet. So it's a portion of this site. He owns more than that back there.
Are those the buildings they're using for warehousing right now? That's what okay, I know where.
Going back a long way.
Yeah, the one building is a newer building, the one way in the back. But the others are,
Yeah,
they're old and they're going to take an awful lot to bring those up to.
yeah, and I think the market is changing on, so,
Yeah,
you know, people's need for that old space is, I think, diminishing.
yeah,
People's need for the newer, larger stuff that computers can roll around on. People don't warehouse like that anymore.
no. One other thing I was going to mention is with the, again, having a chance to talk to Matt, he did say that they're hoping this building's going to be completed by July. And with the building being completed, they're hoping that the landscaping that they showed us, everything will be done at the same time. So for the new tenants, whoever they may be, they have no buddy for sure, but like Tom said, there are people interested, so.
They're, right, and they're a sophisticated company with national brokerage. They didn't put it up for no reason.
Okay.
Any other tidbits on other properties, vacant properties, former, or not the former, but the our house building, anything going on with that?
No, I believe my strategy on that is that they still are, our house is still using it, and they're still making payments to the partnership that owns it, and they're waiting to see, they're going to be the affordable option. You go across the street, and do you want to pay for new industrial space across the street, or do you want to, you know, use this space here? And that's going to be their sale technique. Right, they didn't have any competition, but this will set the standard now. So I think they will. And then our house, I think it's going to, you know, since COVID, a lot of restructuring. They imported almost exclusively from overseas, and we're dependent on that supply chain, and I think they have to relook at that, how to do that. I think the furniture industry is going through a reshuffle too.
Anybody else?
I don't have anything else, Mr. Chairman.
Tom, thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate your information, your input, that's for sure, and your hard work that you're putting in. I know it's been,
Been interesting.
yeah. I don't know, yeah, that's a good thing. Right. Well, once again, thank you.
Right, and you know, I currently go to the planning commission, The village has done that before. But hopefully it'll become a routine thing. You'll have a staff that could, manage.
With the money, it'll help.
Everything comes with the money.
Everything, yeah. Well, it's such a small village, so.
Well, thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Any other business, anybody? You have something?
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman, after hearing from Mr. Tom Jordan regarding, talking about the need to redevelop the existing industrial park. I've already commented, I totally agree. And Madam Chair, as we move forward into 2023, I think, between economic development as well as infrastructure committee, we need to keep our eye on that piece, that on what does that really look like for the village? What does it really mean to the village in terms of redeveloping the existing industrial park, dressing up the infrastructure or improvements to the infrastructure to attract, potential new tenants and that kind of thing. I just think that's an area of focus we could probably spend some quality time around.
Yes, I agree with that. Over the years, even just recently, I drive back there quite a bit just to look and, just to see what needs to be done. There's a lot of businesses back there that need to be cleaned up. It's just gone on for years, and it's just the way it's been, and so they've let it go that way. To get better tenants in there, things are going to have to change. They just are. When I was on council last time and we talked about it, it comes down to the money. What can we do as a village? What can we afford as a village? And I think moving forward with these things that are happening now and the TIP money, that's money that we can use for infrastructure. And so hopefully,
Take care
in
of
the
some of
coming years, we'll be able to move this along. And we'll probably have to sit down and make a plan. I would think that would be something council could do. So, but it's right now, as far as the money, I just can't see us doing too much, but making a plan with.
It's all about the planning.
It's all about the planning.
It's,
The future. That's
it doesn't
how I
happen
look at it.
overnight.
why
It
we're
doesn't
here.
happen overnight. It's all about the planning
No, it's all about, exactly, so,
and sticking with the plan.
yes,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
I think something else that maybe economic development could push in getting this together is council, I believe we need to look at some of our ordinances about leasing and subleasing properties. There's been an ongoing issue with a particular property in the industrial area, and citations are being written, but because of the money, we can't afford to tow these dilapidated vehicles out. I would like to see maybe if there's something we could talk to Mr. Montello about property assessments then.
Well, that would certainly come down to full council and dealing, what we can legally do, this as a whole, as a committee as a whole, so.
Right. Yeah, it's just one other thing that does play into it, because we don't have the funds right now.
Right.
Our officers keep writing these
Correct.
citations.
Correct.
Some of the vehicles get moved, but other vehicles reappear. And it's surmised that it's possibly the property is being leased to somebody else who is then subleasing it for these vehicles. So I think that's something in the ordinances we need to look
Yeah.
at.
There needs to be some legislation.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think we really need to figure out how to get those vehicles out there. Property taxes is just one thing that came to me with the assessments we've done for residents. If a property owner is going to take responsibility and lease out their property to somebody else, they have to ultimately take responsibility of that property, so. That's all I have.
I agree.
I agree.
We're good?
Yeah.
Well, I will ask for adjournment then.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I request adjournment of the economic development.
Second.
The ayes have it. We're
Thank
closed.
you.
We're good.
Okay,
We're off the air.
Not yet. We have about a 15-second lag time. So I'm just going to wait.
Mr. Spitznagel, before you get up there, let me ask you a question.
Hold on, I'm going to end, or should I leave this on screen?
Well, she's got us on. Okay.
Part of the meeting.
No,
No.
Now we end
meeting's
it.
adjourned.
I wondered about the